Hi, my name is Dr. Keisha, and I'm a certified life coach, certified Christian counselor, motivational speaker, and author. I'm also the founder of Impacting Mindsets Global, and thank you so much for watching and listening. Hey, today I want to talk about betrayal. I know that has been a juicy topic as of late, all throughout social media, the gossips. We've been hearing all about betrayal, so let's talk about it. Before we go into my conversation in regards to it, I would like to define the term. It's a really easy definition, but I think most people can at least attest or to confirm or to testify that we have experienced some type or form of betrayal. And so it is simply a breaking or violation of a presumptive contract, violation of trust or confidence that produces moral or psychological conflict within a relationship. Again, it could be with an individual or between groups or organizations and etc. And so there's many ways to obviously to violate a person's trust. Again, the people that do the betraying are often referred to as traitors or betrayers. And when you consider within the realm of romantic love, these individuals are those that commit what we would call infidelity. That's also a form of betrayal. And so today I want to kind of focus on infidelity in terms of the romantic love or romantic relationships. I think that's something that we should definitely discuss as believers because we need to understand that obviously the Bible outlines, that we are not to commit adultery, right, which is infidelity. And so that's something that's one of those do nots, right? That's something that we should not participate in or be a part of. And it's a very serious thing to the Most High, not only in the natural, right, with the romantic love, but also in the spirit realm that we can also betray the Most High God. And did not, even in the natural, Peter betrayed Jesus, and Jesus said that he would. And so we know that to be an issue amongst relationships, that betrayals are very common. And so, how do we go about avoiding betrayals? How do we go about making good on situations that could potentially be heading in that direction? Like, what can we do? One thing that you should know about betrayal or about infidelity is the stats. When you do the research, when you look up the statistics in regards to infidelity, you'll find that 90% of Americans considered infidelity immoral, right? However, 30 to 40% of Americans have cheated on their partners. So, where's the dilemma? Though people may believe and feel that it is immoral, they also think that there are moments and times by which they go against their own morals and values despite of how they feel. And so the question remains, why? Why do people go against their morals and their values and their personal convictions in regards to adultery and infidelity? A lot of it has to do with their emotional needs not being met, whether it's intentional or unintentional by their partner. But what we find, especially in research, especially, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Harley's research, he talks about our emotional needs, and there's different types of emotional needs, but one of them being sexual fulfillment. And again, even if your other needs, emotional needs, are not being met, it can still lead to an affair. It can still lead to infidelity, even if it's non-sexual. And so it's important for couples, married couples, and people that are aspiring to be married to understand the job and the assignment it is to fulfill their partner's emotional needs. And so what happens is whether it's, again, intentional or unintentional, when the partner does not fulfill the other partner's need, then there is a gap, there's an opening there for the enemy to come in and obviously rashad on the situation or on the individual. So the Bible talks about the consistency of the marital bed and how important it is for each to fulfill one another's needs in that regard. And it talked about that, outside of fasting, that you should come back together quickly and have that consistency. And if you don't don't have that consistency, then you'll make room for the enemy. And so, to avoid making room to the enemy, couples have to be intentional about practicing, again, their duties when it comes to that sexual fulfillment. That is important. And so, I think the first things first, your partner should be able to communicate to you what it is that they need from you emotionally, uh, what makes them feel loved by you in terms of the things that you do. How are they fulfilled by you? Your partner should be able to convey that, because again, when you're talking about relationships, people are not mind readers. So it's important that, we up our communication game, right? We have to assert ourselves when it comes to our communication. How do we do that? We simply let our partner know in a polite way, in a respectful way, in a respectful manner, how we feel and what we want, right? It's what we want and how we feel when we receive what we want. That's so important that couples practice assertive communication. And so that would be one way, just simply discovering what it is that your partner needs, or to discover if there is a want or a desire that's not being fulfilled by your partner. And sometimes, partners, we try to be polite and not really tell our partners the truth about how we feel about our relationship. But it is, if you operate in that passivity, you're only hurting your relationship, because you're not being honest and forthcoming. And even the scripture says that, the Father, he desires truth from the inward parts. And so he knows how we feel, but he still wants us to tell him. And so communication is so important, not only to God, but it's important for relationships. So as couples grow, you have to, again, have a strong communication with one another, assertive communication, expressing what it is that you want or desire, and how you feel when your desires and your wants are being met. And what I also like to encourage couples to do is to practice active listening. What is that? It's just simply repeating and or summarizing what your partner said, just for clarity, just to make sure you heard them, to make sure that you're not just leaning to your own understanding or misinterpreting what is being said, so that you can avoid miscommunication. And so when partners do that, they'll have adequate, appropriate communication, and they will avoid those betrayals. They will avoid infidelity and things of that nature, when they're constantly not only communicating, because we just don't communicate for the sake of communicating, but we want to follow through. We want to come up with a strategy, a plan, and then we want to execute whatever strategy, so that we can ensure that everyone gets whatever it is that they need to feel loved. And what's interesting about Dr. Harley's research, again, he gathered data from believers. Oddly enough, the majority of those that participated were believers. So, despite of their morals and their values, void of love, they could not be or maintain a healthy, happy relationship, which is marriage. They could not maintain. They could not stay in a loveless marriage. And it's interesting, because even God said in the beginning in Genesis that it's not good for man to be alone. So can you imagine being in a love relationship, being in a marriage, but yet feeling alone? And God said it wasn't good. So if you have an environment that's being fostered within your marriage, where couples are isolating one another, and they're made to feel alone, or there's gaps in their intimacy, or there's gaps in their communication, or they're simply, being intentional about not giving their partner what they need, it will create a loneliness that will open up the door to the enemy, and open up the door for the potential for betrayal and infidelity. So we want to avoid that. And again, that's why God said that there are some aspects of sin that he will judge, because sometimes it's not always what it seems. It's easy to say, hey, you're an adulteress, you cheated on your husband, you cheated on your wife, when we don't know all the details. But just maybe their partner put them in a position to go out and cheat. Again, we're not condoning any sin or transgression or iniquity, but we're just dealing with the realities of life. Sometimes it is just not black or white. How do I know? Because remember the situation where they brought the woman who was caught in the act of adultery, right? They brought her to Jesus, and Jesus began to write on the ground, because there was clearly some impartiality there. There was clearly some inequity there, right? Because when it came to the law, in order to judge the matter, both people have to be present, and it was only one, which was the woman. And so he couldn't judge the matter fairly and righteously because, again, their motives were wrong. And so as a result, he said that he who is without sin cast the first stone. So oftentimes we have to take a step back and we have to look at situations and circumstances and we have to judge them rightly. And we really do in times have to say, you know what? Some such were some of you, you put you put your husband or wife in a situation that they could have stepped out on the marriage, because of this weakness, and you knew and you were aware that this is something that they needed from you, and you denied them of that. And again, if you're doing everything in your power, right, to give them what they need, and yet still maybe there's a medical condition, maybe there's something more, maybe it's a spiritual problem, maybe it's a stronghold, but that's definitely something that we should consider when looking at betrayals. And then when we're talking about friendship and all that, we know that it happens. And I believe when betrayal happens amongst friends or amongst our peer groups or amongst, in professional settings, it's just a setup. It's just a setup for us to receive a blessing. So, yeah, so that's my take on betrayal. I really do hope that you enjoyed this particular segment and that you got something out of it. And of course, in all things, we want to receive lessons, right, from life, and from our life experiences, and even from the experiences of others. Just like the scripture says that we are living epistles being read of men. So I believe that just like the Holy Scriptures, that we can look at one another's lives and learn a whole lot of things that we can do and things that we should not do, or and that sort of thing. So thank you so much for tuning in. And again, this is Dr. Keisha. Feel free to follow me on all social media at Dr. Keisha. And until next time, bye.